Thank you, Wajida Jamila. Thank you. Greetings of the heart, beloveds. It is so lovely to be here with you to pay tribute to Murshid Wali Meyer. There are many who are not able to join us on screen, but they've written indicating that they are joining us through the ethers, and we welcome their presence, just as we welcome all of yours. And I see us energetically together as forming a more complete picture of who Wali was during his earth walk. And I am grateful. Alhamdulillah. So let's say the invocation together toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty. The only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So I'm probably going to need to read my tribute. So bear with me if you will. But Wali saw the truth of our beings, our essence, our light. And he called that forth in his interactions with us. And those interactions were unique to each one of us because he was able to perceive the inroad that would reach our waiting soul. He guided us to embody our fullness of being, providing us with tools and to use in our earth walk, tools to heal our wounds, and ultimately to see with the mercy-filled eyes of God, to hear with the finely tuned ears of God, and indeed to love with the compassion-filled heart of God. We are truly, truly blessed. Alhamdulillah. Tawaba.
I echo Barakat in so many ways, especially seeing, just watching you all come in and feeling so grateful. I really didn't expect to well up, but to feel so grateful for the privilege of recognizing each one of your souls. And I have to say, if Barakat had sent me a copy of what she was going to say, we have this thing. She is the other me, and I am the other her. Because she was really speaking to Wali Ali's capacity to see the person before him, to see their soul. And he had told me, really, the core gift of a guide sitting with a Mureed is to see their soul. They'll come with their stories, they'll come with their personality. And he would say, your job is to just sit there, be in the presence of their soul. Whatever words come out, direct that to their soul. And where I would have started if I didn't run behind Barakat, I'm just loving it, is I feel so grateful that after a period of estrangement from my beloved teacher, I was called back and I was able to be in connection with him as he moved. And all I can call it at this point is a state change, because I do experience that he is simply not limited by time and space. I feel, and I'm sitting here where he rested in repose, and he is so here. So the last communication I had with him before he left his body, there was a period of about 3 days when he was home and he was just emitting pure light. And he had taught me very early to develop my inner Wali Ali, and I'm really grateful for that also. And he would check it with me at the beginning, and this was really to keep me from asking him a lot of questions when I'm sitting in the office and working with him. But I feel quite confident that this is not my imagination. So in those last days, the tenor of the communication was very light, as in humorous. And in just, it was such a shock that he came home and then suddenly he was leaving. He wasn't just coming home for a respite, he was on hospice, but there was no sense of the duration, simply that he was leaving. And I could see that it was evident that his soul was in control. He had shown me in our conversation at the ashram that the soul is not affected by dementia. One of his core teachings was that the soul cannot be enhanced. The soul cannot be diminished. And his soul was not diminished while everything else fell away. And his soul drove his physical being to the off-ramp and took an exit. So I could see that process. I wasn't with him in person when he was here, but in a humorous moment, he and I had understood that great souls have the capacity to choose the time and place and manner of his passing. So in a very light way, I said, "So, Wali Ali, if you're a great soul, I'll know it if you pass on Thanksgiving." And he said, "If I pass on Thanksgiving, let it be known that my final communication is my great gratitude for the life that was given me in this body." And then I have felt so blessed to feel differently than recognizing that a person who's passed, I'm here, they're going through the bardos, to have been invited as a teaching, the person who could never stop teaching, to sense the process actually passing through the bardos. And I've heard from other people of ways that they have felt and sensed him, and it feels like that. It doesn't just happen when the breath stops. There is this attenuation. So I really look forward to hearing each person's offering to us. And I suggest at times that you pin someone and just spend time like Wali Ali, as if you were Wali Ali, just with one person, being in the presence of their soul. Now, I am so pleased to introduce Mureed and Tara Andrea. And the offering they're going to make is probably the first wazifa dance that Wali Ali learned from them, and he loved it. And he sent me to Hummingbird to bring home more, and that was a gift from him to me also. So in great gratitude for the gift of Wali Ali's life in a human form, I give you Mureed and Tara Andrea.
Hello. And the term legacy of light arises for me, and how the light of Wali Ali's soul has touched us, touched me, and how grateful I am, and how that has enriched my life. And yet we are still the legacy of light, all of us as Mureeds, the legacy of light that he was, is, and will be. And I feel a great responsibility, and am very, very thankful. And so this song says a lot more than words can. Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid, Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid, Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid, Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid, Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid, Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid, Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid, Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid, Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid, Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Hamid. La ilaha, Ya Wali Ali. 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 Ya Shakur Allah, Ya Wali Ali. Amin.
Oh, that brought up the emotion for me. So I thought I would, I was reflecting on what to say about Wali Ali, and so I thought I'd talk about the impressions, things that just impressed me, it just impressed my soul about him. And the first one happened in, the first memory I have of Wali Ali is in 1974. I was still in college. I was 21 years old still. I think I wasn't quite 22. And Ronnie McLaughlin, Kathleen McLaughlin, who was a professor at Lewis and Clark College, and I was still there, had been at a retreat with Wali Ali and invited him to come and speak at Lewis and Clark College, where I was at the time. And so I was in the audience listening to him speak, and it was like a light went off in my head. It was like he was speaking, as you say, directly to my soul. It's like I'd never heard things like that before, the way he was speaking. And I don't really remember what he was talking about. I just remember the impression that, he was just lighting me up on the inside. So that's one impression. Another is, if you've all probably been with him at a retreat and been with him when he was eating, just his enthusiasm with everything he did, really. When he was eating, he was enjoying whatever it was he was eating. He was just so enthusiastic. And another impression was, at Northwest Sufi Camp, we were we were so blessed to have him there for probably at least 20 times, 20 times, maybe more than 20 times over the many years. And especially he made, once Murali was born, he really made Northwest Sufi Camp his camp. He would bring Murali and bring his wife, and just how much love he showed around them was an inspiration. Was so tender. And then another memory I have is one time I was walking up the hill at Northwest Sufi Camp. We had a tent that year out in a meadow, and he was talking to somebody else. I could see that he was talking to somebody else as I was walking up the hill, and something in that conversation made him very angry. And I could see that he got really angry, and he just started walking out in this field, just toward the one. I'm sure he was doing toward the one, as he walked a big loop around this field. And then he came into the tent, and he was calm and he was fine. But that always impressed me of how he dealt with that eruption of anger that I could see happening. I don't know what it was about, but that's how he dealt with it. And then, the final impression, if I was around him and we had an interview or something, every once in a while he would just, reach out and touch my shoulder, perhaps. And there was just such a loving, his touch was just so loving, just so, just like it always, I was always impressed with how he could just put so much love into a simple touch. So that's my impressions of Wali Ali. I had so many opportunities to be with him over the years. Assalam.
Good morning, everyone. I think I'm unmuted there. I'm Kahira, and I'm mostly going to read what I have to say too, maybe a little earthier than some other people's memories, but these are some vignettes that I remembered, and I wrote it out so that I wouldn't forget things. I met Wali Ali in 1978 when we were both on the SIRS board of directors. We had a rocky start. Moinadine was my teacher and had asked me to be the treasurer for SIRS. And nobody on the board really wanted to listen to financial reports by a professional accountant. And there was one Sunday, we spent a whole Sunday once a month that was like 9 years of that. And there was one Sunday when I was giving the report and Wali Ali picked up the Sunday funnies and looked at me and walked out of the room. So I took a stand and communicated to the board how I thought my work went hand in hand with that of the board, and Wali Ali appreciated that. And after that, my relationship with him was transformed, and we did become friends, especially after playing poker together, once at the Sufi house in Petaluma, but that's a whole other story. Later, when Moinadine was going through his challenges with kidney dysfunction and difficult drugs, I would consult with Wali Ali, who understood the dilemma of having a teacher, his friend, who was in such ill health. Moinadine later told me he did not feel capable of working with older Mureeds any longer, and I stayed in no-guide limbo for a couple of years. And then I was listening to Wali Ali give a talk at Mendocino Woodlands around 1990. I heard him say with his characteristic strength, "Man creates God." My inner response was, yes, we do. And I had long had that perspective myself. He soon initiated me at the Mentor Garden. We continued to meet occasionally or emailed each other. Sometimes we'd have lunch and sometimes it would just be a chat. The relationship was more a collaboration, a redesigned friendship than advisory. The only advice I remember him giving me was don't look at your watch quite so much when you're leading zikr, which was really good advice. He had a subtle wit. We were eating together at a Mexico camp, and Sabura was separating the frosting from the cake and the dessert. I do this as well. He said to her, "What are you strip mining there, dear?" At one of our meetings, I was distraught about a war, maybe Iraq or Afghanistan. He said, there have always been wars. It's important to keep the perspective that over time, humanity has evolved and has gotten better. Just look at the difference between now and the Middle Ages. So I've taken heart when political news seemed overwhelming. My spiritual practice is primarily the path of friendship. It's no accident that my last Sufi teacher's name could be translated friend to God. Thank you.
Hi. At the last day of the 2015 Wazifa retreat, I was sitting next to Barakat in the last silent morning, and she looked down in my lap, and I had a pile of papers, and there was some musical notation paper, and she's like pointedly glancing at it. And I made a motion of, I'll explain it later or something like that. And we had the last morning meeting. And then before lunch, I got my guitar and met her in the lobby and got it out and was showing her the music that I'd been working on. It was a traditional American tune, the Cuckoo song, with two different zikr pieces, one running slow, a slow song, and then a fast spoken part. And so as we started to work it through, Wali always just happened into the lobby, and he saw what was going on, and he came over and plunked himself down next to Barakat, and he started coming along with the fast zikr part with her. And it was just such a delight to be, I was singing the slower part and they were chanting the faster part. And just the flashing of his eyes and the playfulness of his participation was just wonderful. And it was just an amazing chance to be there celebrating what turned out to be the last of the Wazifa silent retreats, was that year, 2015. So it was just a great chance and a solid celebration of a marvelous pattern of those silent retreats. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria Julia Handpling, and Wali Ali came to a retreat gathering here in Portland, Oregon, and stayed at our house. And during this time, I came to a point of really inner crisis, and Wali Ali just held space for me, walked me through my own inner fire and fear, and I knew that I would face deep catharsis in collaboration with his light, which was tremendously comforting. I know that one of his great relationships in life was with Murshid Sam. Long after Sam passed in 1971, Wali Ali kept his stories and his teachings of the heart, the walks. Murshid Sam and Wali Ali even shared the same vocal qualities, which is entertaining. He wrote many of the Mureed's stories or experiences with Sam in meditation, in dreams, and bringing whatever message or simply presence that Sam brought, which was my experience too. And I never met Sam in the body, but I'm looking forward to reading the stories that I hope these will be collated someday, of how the body, well, I'll just say that Moinadine, my longtime teacher, told me at one point that death removes the physical body, but the love remains, the relationship remains, and it can continue to grow infinitely. Now that Wali Ali is freed from his physical body, I look forward to the love growing and his guidance in the subtle places. And who knows, he may well have a visit for many of us. I imagine the greeting that Wali Ali would receive from Murshid Sam and from Muinadeen in the ethereal realms. And so I am tremendously grateful for Wali Ali, my teacher, and a guide to so many of us, and as our friend in God. And thank you very much.
I'm going to tell a story that makes me smile, sometimes laugh. This is the last line of a letter, an email Wali Ali sent me. Stephen is my husband. Please convey my condolences to Stephen on how badly the Colts did in the playoffs. When he was at my house, he would watch football on TV, and it was a point of contact between him and Stephen. So I was remembering, this was 2006, and I had a quarrel with my husband. I was very upset by something he did. And Wali Ali had said to me once or twice, he said, my teacher, Sam, always told me, give me material. I'm like that too. I want material. I want to know about your life. But I never did give him material unless it was spiritual. It just didn't seem worthwhile to me. But now I was in this terrible uproar. So in my email, which was kind of long and, had stuff about the esoteric course I was taking, I finally got to the real point, which was how annoyed I was and blah, blah, blah. And he didn't even apologize and blah, blah, blah. And so, and then, I was waiting for his response. What's he going to tell me? How's he going to help me? And I get this letter back, and it's very bland and short, and it has you might want to do a retreat at home, a solo retreat at home. And I'm thinking, he didn't even mention my story, not even once. And I get to the last two lines of the story. And the first line is, please convey my condolences to Stephen on how badly the Colts did in the playoffs, which I figure, oh, that's his answer. It's like, how could he give condolences to Stephen when I'm the one who needs them? And then I thought more like, okay, I got my answer from him. It's like, I want material, but this is not the material, actually. So I learned that lesson. And only 2 weeks ago, when I was looking up the date of this email, did I see the last line of the letter, the second line, which was paired with it and was indeed a response. He said, human psyches are indeed bound together in an incredible patchwork. So it is. And that was his second teaching. Thank you, Wali Ali.
So I'd like to offer a practice, a wazifa practice. Wali Ali did many practices, but this was one of his really root ones. Yadal Jalali Wal Ikram, which is the marriage of great power and incomparable generosity, which are born from the Zat, the essence. And I think he embodied both great strength and enormous generosity in that love that each of you have spoken about. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya Dal Jalali wal Ikram, 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 Yadal Jalali Walikram 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 Ikram Yadal Jalali Walikram 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 Yadal Jalali Walikram. So please take it into the fikr on the breath, inhaling and exhaling. Yadal Jalali Walikram. And now just a few breaths in the fikr asir, savoring the fragrance of this practice. Amin.
Well, hello. It's very hard to know where to start. with my relationship with Murshid Wali Ali. He seems to have always been in my life, actually 55 years. I think I can trace him back to 1967 when I first met Murshid. He was always there. I don't know if he was initiated before I was or not, but I seem to remember him being there from the very beginning. And certainly Murshid Sam and Murshid Wali Ali have been the most powerful influences on my life in many, many, many ways. I also worked with Wali Ali as a private investigator at one time. We worked. That's another lifetime. I won't really go into, but we worked together as private investigators for a firm that did quality control for restaurants and nightclubs and things of that nature. Murshid Wali Ali came to my rescue many times in my life when my daughter passed away and I needed some guidance, and he was right there for me. And when I had many experiences in dance classes, and just before he passed away recently, I had the luxury of spending time with him at the Conca and telling stories. And I just can't say enough about how big of a blessing that this man was in my life. But what I would like to do, rather than ramble on, is to read you a letter that he wrote to me in 1971. Someone asked me actually to read this letter. And it was the same year that Murshid Sam passed away. I was in Scotland. I had just was getting married to a Scottish lady. Mariam was her name. And we were getting ready to get married. And Murshid Wali Ali wrote me this letter. And this was one of the few things that I have directly in his hand for me, even though I worked with Murshid for 10 years as his assistant, and we wrote many things back and forth, but this is one of the few things that I have of his. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother. Please rest assured that your connection with all of us here continues to pulsate with mutual love. I know Moinuddin has written to you in this vein, telling you to feel free to present any elements of Murshid's work which has proved beneficial in your own practice. Rashad was just here and then broke down health-wise in Los Angeles, where we hear he is laid up for a week. Just adrenaline reaction as far as I can see. I feel no compulsion to expand. We are growing as a plant. So as long as we get sunshine and water and continue to pull up the weeds, we have nothing to fear. Among Murshid's last instructions was that we should emphasize concentration practices until the whole life becomes focused. One thing that did come from my conversations with Rashad was the feeling that the dances must definitely be approached with reverence and with the understanding that they are actually spiritual disciplines in their own way. There are so many things to concentrate on in doing the dances: fitting the circle, move together, harmonizing vocally, placing the mantra in the heart, feeling one's own body fully, listening to the leader at all times. We should feel no compulsion in presenting the dances to get it on, etc. It is better to present them with the attitude that they require careful attention, methodical attention at the outset. That the same dance may be stopped many times until we get it right. In this way, we will leave ourselves room to grow. We also got straight with Pir Vilayat on questions of structure and organization, alhamdulillah. This is at a time when we were still very closely aligned with the Sufi order, and of course we are now, once again, but there was a time when we separated from them for a while, and this was just before that. We agreed that the group founded by Murshid, the Sufi Islamia Ruhaniyat Society, is of national and even international scope, that it is an associated activity of the Sufi order, receptive as Murshid intended to other orders in the Orient, with the purpose in part of presenting the dances, walks, songs, etc., and all elements of Murshid's Dharma. That Mureed, as was Murshid's wish, is the head of it with full rights to appoint any successor and so on. At the same time, the Sufi Islamia Ruhaniyat Society, in a limited sense, functions as the branch of the Sufi order directed by Pir Vilayat, that he appoints the leader in this sense. Mureed also in at this time. This may sound complicated, but once you sort it out, it gives an accurate picture of what's happening. We have received the most interesting letters from Caliph Jamshid in Konya and Persia. What an adventure. He is really doing it right. Soon he will be in Pakistan, and Murshid's friends there have arranged a full schedule for him, including stay at Sarawala with Pir Murshid Sufi Barkat Ali. Please keep us posted. We love to hear from you, O beating heart, breath of our breath. Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, Wali Ali.
Hello, beloved companions. I'm Saraswati, and here's Junaid. I want to just begin with a lot of gratitude, Barkat, and Tuaba, and to Omar. Thank you, Omar. And to Man. You've meant a lot to me on this journey. All of you. So I'm the one who's speaking today. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my beloved Junaid, because he actually met and became Wali Ali's Mureed in 1974. And then about 10 years later, we met and got married. And right after we were married, we went to Northwest Camp to meet Wali Ali. So it was really important to me that I understand my husband's spiritual path and his guru. And I was so delighted when I met Wali Ali. And we went down in front of the cabin and sat on these chairs with Wali and Mira, because I found him just to be a regular person. He was not pretentious. He didn't have an act. He was real. And I felt really relieved. I felt like I could really fall deeply into my marriage and embrace the path that my husband was on. So that was the first gift. And then I felt like that was his teacher, and I couldn't have the same teacher as my spouse. So for a long time, I looked for someone to have on the Sufi path. and was initiated by Rabia Anna Perez. So this story isn't about me, it's about Wali Ali, but my journey was complicated. And actually, I began with Wali Ali not until 2012. And that was the hugest gift of my spiritual path, because like Aman, I felt that Wali Ali saw me. He saw my soul, and he dedicated. He was a dedicated spiritual teacher, and I felt that. So he really gave me the wings to securely and unquestionably embrace the esoteric teachings and everything underlying that, and the silsila of Sufism. And it has been the most ecstatic beginning of my teaching and of my spiritual path. To be seen by a true spiritual teacher gives you sails that will never, ever break. And the other thing is that he gave me was this ecstatic light of Murshid Sam. So after I was initiated by Wali Ali, I loved going to any program he offered and doing the walks and the dances with Wali Ali, because he did them with such amazing grace and strength for being this kind of large, everyday person. And I very much got a lot of transmission from dancing with him and being with him there in any dance circle. And one of my favorite things about dancing with Wali Ali is invariably he would have his socks would start slipping off his feet. And then gradually he'd get like, oh, he'd trip over one of his socks clumped up under his foot, and he'd bend down and grab the sock and throw it across the room. And I always had this impulse that I wanted to run over and grab one of Wali Ali's socks for keeps, you know, Baraka of Wali Ali. But I never did. If a message gets back to Sabura and she sends me a pair of Wali Ali socks, I'll frame them. Anyway, I wrote out a few gems. I went through my journals and I wrote out a few gems that are Wali Ali gems to me, and maybe to you too. And I'm going to read these and then I'll be done. One that Wali Ali said almost every time, he said, make the practice your own. He brought in the Zen. Who were you before your mother and father? Integration, integration, integration. Show me one person on this screen, show me one person in this room who has not been appointed my spiritual teacher. Quoting Sam. Ya Jamia. Synthesizing and claiming inheritance. Surrendering and full prostration all the way down. Surrendering all the way up. There's no compulsion in Sufism. God is your lover, not your jailer. Do not block the door. Wali Ali is truly our friend, our king of all things, and the light of Sam, and a most patient Murshid. Ya Shakur.
I don't have anything to add to that.
When you were born, you cried, and the world rejoiced. Live your life so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. I think Wali Ali's really rejoicing. Thank you for sharing this light.
Hello, friends. Mureed here. I could echo so much of what's already been said. One of the qualities of the many qualities that Wali Ali manifested that impressed me tremendously was, in addition to his deep experience and his wisdom, was his integrity. As I experienced him working with me, and as I observed his method of working with other people. I came to San Francisco to be with him in Moinudeen because I met the Sufi path and Shahabuddin in Atlanta in 1975, and Shahabuddin wouldn't initiate me. While he initiated everybody around me. But he said, I'm going to interfere in your life. You need to go to San Francisco and see Wali Ali and Moinudeen. They have something to give you, and you have something to give them. And the profound truth of that guidance that came through Shahabuddin's mouth at that point in time has echoed and re-echoed and re-echoed in my life over the decades. And I arrived very, very naive in terms of what spirituality really was and what spiritual teachers were. I had very, very strong, very rigid concepts. And I'd written to Moinudeen and to Wali Ali from Atlanta, giving my entire spiritual CV, naively believing that I'd get responses back saying, oh, yes, we knew you were coming and we're waiting for you. Wali Ali never replied, and I got a very polite but very non-committal message from Moinudeen. And my first meeting with Wali Ali was in Mendocino Camp, 1975, and I was appalled. And I could not believe that this loud man who was stomping all around the camp, and he shouted at some people, I couldn't believe that this was my teacher. And yet, I trusted that impulse and that transmission that had come through Shahabuddin months and months before, and stuck with it and began to see what was behind that, to me, very gruff and very off-putting personality. And when we would meet for one-on-one interviews, I still thought spiritual teachers would tell me what to do with my life. And I had questions, and I would tend to frame them in the way of, okay, this is what's going on. What do I need to do? And in almost every case, he very deftly and very quickly turned it around and put the power back in my lap. With a perspective, with an expanded container for it, but he did not appropriate any of the power that I was willing to give over. And seeing what happened in those early years, and as one horrible situation after another with different teachers of appropriating power and abuse, I feel so incredibly fortunate that I was directed to him. Because of the way the integrity of not taking the power and not telling someone else what they needed to do, but of expanding awareness and offering possibilities and practical ones as well. At another point, I must have had some type of complaint about behavior I'd seen some of the people that had titles engaging in. And one of the things he said was that we're all beings of light and shadow, and that we all were working in the best way we knew how, and that our work is covered in grace. Covered in grace. And the other very, very powerful thing that he did that pushed me out of the limited way I was looking at things was in part of my whole relating of my story and trying to get some answers to how I was supposed to behave. I wanted him to list some standards of behavior for me. And he would sidestep the question, redirect, go on to something else each time I came up about standards. And finally he got so exasperated in another interview that he spoke loudly. He didn't shout, but he spoke loudly. He said, "You don't need any standards. Whatever you do, do it from the highest place in yourself that you can touch, and you'll be fine." And whoa, what an expansion, and what a realization that that was something that I knew how to do. And he didn't say from the highest place there is. He said the highest place that you can reach in that moment. What a tremendous amount of gratitude for everything that I caught, everything that he taught, everything that he modeled, that I've been able to witness and to make use of in my own way in terms of making my way along the path of my soul, not in imitation of him, though that's where a lot of things began, of trying on an imitation, but then finally moving deeper and deeper into who I could become through the guidance that he offered. And I'd like to finish with a few Ya Hayo, Ya Qayyums, because that was a central practice along with so many others that he presented and he did. Ya Hayo, Ya Qayyum, 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 Ya Hayo, Ya Qayyum. Thank you.
Yes. Hello, beloveds. I'm Ka. I received blessing initiation from Wali Ali many years ago and had interviews with him when at Northwest Sufi Camp or when he came to Seattle. During one of these, I asked for full initiation, and he moved us into subtler realms. When the ritual was complete, a sparkle lit up his face in the room. And he said, "And now I can give you wazifa." In that moment, he was like a child in a room full of treasure. Namaste.
Allahu Akbar. Astaghfirullah. I'm going to take a moment before we sing to say just a couple things from our time with Wali Ali. A year there, right at the end before he went to the ashram. The first thing, towards the end of the time that we met with him, he said, "My biggest fear is losing my connection with Murshid." The other thing that we really felt through every time that we went was the Murshid abides. We could see that cognitive decline over time. But the Murshid abides. That, there were times, we'd always be inspired when we went home. After midnight, that zikr feeling, and you're like, oh God, it's going to take me a while to go to sleep. It was there. We had that kind of experience in that time frame. So whatever else was going on, we can truly say the Murshid abides. And then the one other thing I'll say is that in 2021, just before Wali Ali's birthday, more than once he told us, I want to challenge people. I would like to challenge people to flip the script and view themselves for who they really are. And then from our time with reciting Saladin, the poem with him, these two lines always impressed me. One day people will stop worshiping Sitaram. One day people will worship with Sitaram. So inshallah, that's our attitude with our Murshid. And did you want to mention something about the song? Or?
No, you're good.
So then this song, we had Magdalena with us occasionally and our faithful cameraman Shakur. And so this developed into a dance, and there were some beautiful moments where Wali Ali was turning with Vakila and Magdalena, and we saw at least once a beautiful moment between Magdalena and Wali Ali where, wow, he really came out in a way that we normally didn't see. So Ya Fatah, this song is dedicated to him in that time.
Alhamdulillah. Mubdi here. My heart cracked open in 2006 when Wali Ali initiated me, my Murshid. I'm very touched. I want to say a couple thank yous first because I just need to. For Barakat and Tawaba, thank you for putting this together and for your dedication, for all that you served for so long and continue. I'm so deeply grateful. And for all of you. And my heart really did crack open. That's why I'm teary. And my other thank you is for the last year when Halim, Nizamuddin, and Vakila held him for a year, held that practice. And that meant so much to me. I knew you were there, and I feel like it just was the foundation. It steadied him, and for Sabura too in Morali. Whew. So when I signed up to talk, I thought I was just going to talk. And then I saw the thing earlier, it said tribute. And I went, oh, I'm not sure if I can do a tribute. I've just felt the need to talk. So I thought about it a little bit and I thought, okay, all right, I can do this. My tribute. He gave us this. Physicians of the heart, the wazifas that made it real, real just to embody and bring into our lives. He gave this from the help of so many of you, Tawaba. Look at this. This is a tribute. I want to honor this. The walks. The walks. God is breath. What he gave to humanity is enormous through all of us and through all he's touched. Enormous. How grateful I am. This huge man gave this to humanity, and at the same time, my heart, all of our hearts. That's my tribute, this enormousness that he was able to embody and bring to us. So just a wee bit of sharing. I really saw the breath of him, what he could do and just be with our souls, with my soul. The last time I saw him was in June, and it was with, Tawaba was there, but it was on a Sunday afternoon with Halim, Vakila, and Nizamuddin. I'm so grateful. And this was the last embodied teaching I got from him. It was at the end of the day, and Sabura had made brownies. It's just beautiful what she did. And we'd spent the afternoon together doing practice, and many of you know it was a practice in motion and going with the flow with him. And he was all heart, and still teaching. Even that day, I could feel that, I could witness it. But what I got for me that day was really has just continued for me. Nizamuddin so beautifully had shaved him after the day we had eaten our brownies, and just Nizamuddin, I still remember that, how gently you shaved him. It was just so touching. And so Murshid's sitting there, and then his hair is still unkempt, and I'm going, oh, I so want to comb your hair. And he didn't like to have his hair combed. Sabura was there, and she's like, oh, I don't know. And so I asked him, I said, hey, could I comb your hair? And he said, okay. And I looked at Sabura, and she was like, And so I asked him again, I said, is it okay? And Sabora's like, okay, I'll go get the comb, or I can't remember if it's a comb. I think it was a brush. So I'm combing his hair. He allowed it. And, he's sitting where Tawaba is. I'm combing his hair, and I'm just, oh, it's so touching for me. I'm combing my Murshid's hair, and I'm going to make them all nice, look good, And so I'm doing it. I'm trying to be as gentle as I can. I'm combing it. And at one point, I just saw him wince, like, oh, it was so brief. Just, In that moment, I realized that the sacrifice you give for love, that was his teaching for my soul in that moment, was that he knew that I wanted to comb his hair. I wanted that. It was for me that he gave himself and showed me that we sacrifice at times, or maybe always, but that was just in that moment for love. And that's really what I want to share. The sacrifice that, I don't know if it was sacrifice, but that's how my words came. And it was a great teaching for me. And this was about 10 days after he died. I was out doing practice in the backyard, and I'm really grateful for Shabda putting out the days of practice. It's been very grounding for me and very, just an honor. So this is what I wrote after doing that. Moon in fullness, dawn stars dancing, telling, announcing that you are here. Ya Allah, Ya Wali Ali.
Hard to follow something that beautiful. So what came to me when the announcement came out about sharing something, there was so much. I thought, how can I put it in words? And then this one little piece came to me, which is that Wali Ali gave us the keys to the kingdom. And he gave us those keys in so many ways, in so many different times. And the most precious of those times for me were the Wazifa retreats, the intensives that I attended. And I did that, I don't know how many times, year after year after year, and it never tired. And those of you who attended knew that we were divided up into little groups based on where we were needing to go with our personal growth. And each morning, the little group would meet with Wali Ali, and he would give us the practices for that day. And the image that came to me was when I was a little kid in elementary school. The custodian of our school had this big ring that had keys, many keys of all different shapes and sizes. And he would walk along taking care of everything with the keys jingling. And so every morning when we would go and we would get our paper of practices, it felt as though I was being given keys for the day. And I would go back to my little room and I would take the key of that morning, that wazifa practice, and I would jimmy the lock, jimmy the lock. Just keep working the lock, keep working the lock. And often a door would open into some new state of consciousness, some new awareness, some experience that was magnificent. And sometimes they were profound. I remember this one time, clearly you can see like how you come down from these states by what my mind was doing. So I was in this place and it felt like, oh my God, I'm in the throne room of God. And I came down a little bit more, sitting there in my sweatpants and sweatshirt going, oh, good thing there's no dress code in the throne room of God. And so, but it was, each one was like, many were more profound than that. And I've taken these moments back. Of course you come down, but these moments, you never forget what opened behind that door. And then in my life, as I go through my life or I work with my own students, these are living realities. They're not just sounds, they're living realities that interpenetrate our lives. And so I feel now when I go back to Physicians of the Heart, I hear his voice coming through there. And I know many voices were in that book, but I hear his voice coming through. And I am eternally grateful for what he gave us and the efforts that it took for him to put those practices together in the book and the retreats. And I'm just so happy that I connected with him. I've been around for a long time, but he and I only connected later in our Sufi journeys. And I said to him, Wali Ali, this is the kind of spiritual teaching I've been wanting my whole life. I wish we had connected sooner. And he said, I wouldn't have been able to do this sooner. So we both had to mature to get to this wonderful connection. So I just hope I keep remembering those keys on the key ring and keep jimmying the locks. It's all there. That's what I have to say.
I just love being here. This is such a love bath, and I love every story. And I'm remembering my initiation in the upper room at the Mentor Garden in 1982, just the two of us. And the last time I saw him, which was when I went to the Mentor Garden with Halim Vakila and Nizamuddin for the Zikr with Wali Ali. And I had been wondering if he would recognize me because of the dementia. And he walked into the room and he saw me and his face lit up and he said, "Look who's here." And I felt so seen at the soul level that I was just thrilled through the whole afternoon. But that isn't what I wanted to share with you today. I want to share with you a couple of very short quotes. I just finished reading The Revelations of the Aramaic Jesus, the Hidden Teachings on Life and Death. And I read these two things and I thought about this gathering and I thought I have to share these things. He has fulfilled his mission. So his ruha, his soul, travels further. It leaves behind a trail in the inner world that his students can follow. We could call this a trail of breath, since like the vapor trail of an airplane, it follows in the wake left by his soul as it departs. And the other one, the connection with and through the teacher who has passed will become greater upon that person's passing, but only for those who have grasped the teacher's inner essence, rather than only his or her outer words and actions. Otherwise, they are left simply repeating stories about the good old days when the teacher was with us.
Ya Allah, in love, reverence, and humility, I surrender to thee and to thee alone, and thou raise me spiritually. This prayer was shared to us by Wali Ali, a prayer from Sam, and has become a cornerstone of my practice there. Tara, Andre, and I were able to visit Wali Ali at the end of October. before he left the elder ashram. And it was a briefer visit than what we'd like, but we came in and, he talked about the clarity, the clear blue sky, in a beautiful metaphorical way that the soul can express itself. His soul can express itself. He talked about the lights that were hanging there, and the light in that beautiful poetic way, and the cooperation and the togetherness he felt at the elder ashram as well. And during this time, there's in the little courtyard, there's like a little fountain. There wasn't any water in it, but he would get up from the seat and walk around and make a circle around there. And we were just led to follow him and really do Tasawwuri Wali Ali. But there was such energy and robustness in his walk. This was a merging and blending of the energies that Wali Ali, the soul that he was, and in his relationship and connection with Murshid Sam. It was a very powerful practice, and I'm very grateful to have had that experience with him before he died in November and on Thanksgiving. And our relationship really was through wazifa, through the qualities, the attributes, these living realities. And I like what Louise said about the keys. And he allowed me and encouraged me to roam freely in this realm, these realms, and be taught and be guided. I had several dreams with him, many dreams, especially throughout the period of his dementia and the severe dementia. And in each dream, there was, we would move through the dementia to a point of clarity, like working through that, that wall until there was clarity. And I feel very grateful again to experience him in this realm of dreams and the landscape of my psyche and my soul, that where so much music has arisen because of my relationship to him and the wazifas. So much music of wholeness, of unity. Amen.
Good afternoon. It's really been so lovely to listen to everyone. As I was sitting here, I wrote down a few notes. And what came to me particularly is how Wali Ali's really been there at certain times that were really pivotal in my life. In one particular case, which is perhaps the hardest to just relate publicly, I was on the board of directors and was blessed with a manic episode when I hadn't had one in 25 years right there, and ended up in the hospital up in the Northwest. And a number of people kept saying, oh, call Wali Ali. You've got to call Wali Ali. You've got to call Wali Ali. So, I get the permission while I'm in the hospital. Oh, call Wali Ali. And I say, well, Wali Ali, everybody says I've got to call you. And he goes, oh, Ayesha, there is nothing wrong with you. He said, it's just sunspots. They come around about every 25 years. I wouldn't worry about anything. So he had a way of just accepting. And on that same vein, at one point in time, I said to him many, many years later in an interview, I notice I've been a Mureed here about 30 years, and a number of people I've brought into the Sufis, are teachers now, and I don't need to be a teacher, but, is there something about me, thinking of that history, is there some reason why that would not be a place I could, do you have some black mark by my name? And he goes, no, Ayesha, you've been a teacher for years. You just have to get over it to make it official. So that was a great teaching. I also got a tremendous amount out of his 2 big weekends on forgiveness practices, which have really been a central life-saving core in my life. When I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis and received disability and could no longer be a physical therapist, I asked him, well, what would I do? What am I going to do? I've had this professional skill, and what will I be able to do that I can make any money at? Like I don't have a lot of these other skills. And he gave me a practice, Yagan, I think it was Yagani. And I've never heard this description exactly in the books, but he said it's for just something. He said, impossible conditions and lost causes. And within a few weeks, someone came up to me and said, I think you need to be a nanny. You're really good with children. And I had a second career as a nanny for 20 years and was just very happy. So I just think in a way, he had a way of seeing you. I remember once just being at camp, and he just came up to me and he says, I notice your Jupiterian nature. He said, you're always walking through camp, looking this way and that way to just make sure everything's okay. So those are, it's like someone, Saraswati, I think, well, Saraswati talked about socks, but just, excuse me, about, I'm going to drop that thought. And I'm going to, at this point, be one of those people who talks about the teacher in the good old days. And I'm going to mention he came through here in 1989 and brought his 3 teenage daughters and stayed with us because he knew I had a teenager in a house and he'd been here before. And that was really lovely. And we were going to have Chinese delivered. And I set the table really nicely with my white china, and I think a few guests were coming over. And I came back in to the dining room and I found that he'd gone over to my rock box and he had placed the rock slabs that I keep in a bowl, one in each plate. And then he invited us to choose our place by the rock that he'd put down. And then in relation to the way back at the first Sufi camp, Wali Ali got up at our talent show and did a guitar rendition of I Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog. And then Ramamai and I had to go out the next day and go out and get him a hernia belt because he really put everything into it in his rendition. And then another thing, he was unpartnered at this time. And so sometimes when he'd come to camp, Ramamai and I afterwards would take him shopping because there were some socks that she'd found he really liked. And I think we were in a Macy's and he needed shoes. The flap of his shoes were off. So we got him the shoes and I ended up taking the shoes home, and we had a joke then. And I said, well, Wali Ali, I think I'll keep these shoes. I said, you never know, after you're gone, if maybe we might have some giant, fundraiser for the Rohaniya. There's just no telling how much money we could raise. And they were so sad, but he got a big laugh out of that. And, in the last year, I always kept seeing, I only kept one shoe, and I kept looking at it. And I thought, that just seems so disrespectful to raffle the shoe. And I finally let it go. And I'm really kind of sorry I did, because I miss seeing the shape of Wali Ali's foot in my closet. So I think a thing about him, when I think of just how emotionally sometimes you can really love someone and you want their attention. But I never felt in myself a need to yearn for attention from him, because there was just an understanding that he was there for you. He cared for you. He didn't, he wasn't about, he liked to play, but he also wasn't about trivial things. And I loved him very much. Amen.
Beloveds, I'm sure many of you have noticed that we've actually gone over our formal time, and yet we still have several people who wish to share. Munir, who was going to lead one of Wali Ali's favorite dances to close with, is going to have to leave. So he's going to play now. I will certainly be staying to hear the other people who share. It is the most beautiful sharing. Thank you, thank you. And if there's any way you think you might be able to trim some off the edges of what you have planned to share in order to get to the essence of your tribute to Wali Ali, that would be wonderful. Others may have to leave. We understand, but Munir, if you would lead us now. Thank you.
I will. Thanks everyone for your sharing. Dance leaders know that Wali Ali would often be teaching in a circle, and then he'd point and say, Munir, lead that Ram Nam that I like. That's what I'll always remember about him. Here's a song he really loved, Maitreya's Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ya Salam, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Blessings to everybody.
Hi there. So my backdrop here is underwater. This is where I see God the most. Wali Ali very often gave me the practice of zikr. There's no reality except God. And one of the greatest things I have been able to do is do scuba diving and do zikr at the same time. Rhythmic breathing, being weightless, seeing God all around me. So that's why I chose this as my background. I'll try to be quick because I know we are moving along. Wali Ali was a friend. Wali Ali and I bought a house together right around the corner from the Mentor Garden. Salim and I lived in there until we sold the house. Towards the end of the 70s, when Sadat and Begin in Israel were doing the peace accords, Wali Ali and Iqbal, Muhammad Iqbal, felt that it would be good to bring some of Shamshir's ocean thermal energy conversion. Bryn Bors's work to Israel and also to Egypt. So through some connections we had with the Grateful Dead, who had just finished a concert in Egypt, Wali Ali, Iqbal, and I went to Egypt and met with some of the people with Mrs. Sadat's blessing to present them with Bryn Bors's ocean thermal energy conversion. So for us, it was a blessing. There was this person who was my spiritual teacher, and Muhammad Iqbal, who was my racquetball partner. And we traveled together, and there was Wali Ali experiencing things for the first time. To be around a teacher who was experiencing things for the first time. We went to the Queen's Chamber in the Grand Pyramid. We went to Israel and prayed at the Wailing Wall. And one of the very interesting experiences we had is we were on a strict budget, so we didn't have that much money. And I think we were in Jordan. We were invited by the Howling Dervishes to be with them at some wedding celebration. And we walked over the rooftops of Amman, Jordan to go to this big party. But we didn't have that much money. And we were doing this at our own accord, our own penny. So the three of us were in one room in this hotel. And it was a room, and two of us couldn't be standing at the same time. So one of us would have to stay in the bed while the other people were walking around. And that was the first day. And the second day, Wali Ali tended to snore. Those of us who have been around him, and I'm sure we have a lot of empathy for Sabura, but Wali Ali was a snorer. So Muhammad and Iqbal and I looked at each other and said, listen, we don't have a lot of money, but let's get Wali Ali his own room so that we can proceed to enjoy our experience of being here in the Middle East. So we did that, and Wali Ali accepted it very gracefully because, again, we could, have rooms to ourselves. So that was just a very, very interesting experience for me. I just want to, by listening to everybody and reflecting on, I feel I missed out with Wali Ali. I was very close to Wali Ali and very involved in my practices and very involved with the Kanka when I lived in San Francisco. And then I moved to Mureed and my world changed. I would occasionally come back and meet with Wali Ali and he would give me practices. But I would do my superficial Sufi practices every day. But it was only the last 6 or 7 years when I was able to participate in God is Breath, and then had the joy of mentoring God is Breath in English and in Spanish. So God's breath has been with me for the last 6 years. And this truly has brought me back to my connection with Wali Ali and to my connection with Sufism. Just as a closing, because I know we need to be quick. Over the last several months, I've gotten to do Som and Salat a little bit more with more focus than I have in the past. And in Salat, we say, thy light is in all forms, thy love in all beings, in a loving mother, in a kind father, in an innocent child, in a helpful friend, and an inspiring teacher. Wali Ali was and is for me a helpful friend and an inspiring teacher. Thank you so much. The essence of our being truly is love. Thank you.
Hello? I am lost. Am I found? I've lost Zoom.
You're
Beloved,
on,
we
David.
can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, I will read my short thing then. I praise Wali Ali for letting me be this wayward spirit so free. Validated by him, I was born lucky. The garden of Allah just up the street where Murshid Sam lived sometimes. Yet our paths only crossed through Wali Ali's line. I played for Sufi dance with Shabda in early days and Zikr with Bashist, Mansour, and Saadi. Even played the first Mevlevi Sema, dervish turning west of the Mississippi. In the quiet backing with Wali Ali, so ecumenical, I was always blessed. Sufi, Jain, Unitarian, or Taoist, even holding the salmon close, as our Salish forebears have. Wali Ali supported my way in this time of offering, in the community that holds his memory. So I offer you this 12-string, a continuation of his laughter's ring as the nectar comes forth in our remembering. So I just want to observe the how the men in the Sangha grow old and the women seem not to. But I have a number of Sanghas. One is the Fisher Poets Gathering that happens in Astoria, which is 25 years old now, and we watch the graying of the fleet. And I see so many of us are of senior years. And as that happens, we see how the ancestors come close. And it's such riches. So I just want to thank you for holding the concentration and the love. Amen.
Hello. I met Wali Ali, I think in 1976. I walked into a dance meeting. I'd been on the spiritual path. I'd met Ram Dass and studied yoga and looking for a teacher. And I walked into a dance meeting in San Francisco. dance, that caught me right away. And this person, Wali Ali, back in those days, just caught my attention. And the center of the dance, he got up and spoke. And every word he said spoke to the depth of my soul. And it continued that way for the rest of my life. Everything he's always said, the words were there, but I hardly heard the words. It was what he was really saying that touched me deeply. And so he was, I remember him a little different. Everybody's seen him after his transition in the 80s when he spent 4 years teaching school in Virginia, raising his daughters and learning to be a human being. Because in the early days, Wali Ali was very difficult to approach. He was this figure that was the teacher. He was the guru. We had gurus back in the 70s. And you had to have a positivity and a brightness in order to approach him and to be able to talk with him. Because, if you go up and said, hi, this, he'd just say, thank you. And he'd walk away. This happened often, in those days. So you had to be complete and confident in yourself to have a conversation with him in those days. And he changed so much in the early 80s. He changed to become this warm, open-hearted person that we all know now, and that we all love now. I never got a lot of practice from him in 45 years of being his Mureed. He gave me practices every once in a while. What I got from him was his confidence in myself, that I was charting a path that he was happy with, and he always supported me. He was always there to support me. He'd call upon me to lead practices at different events. We attended, he'd be there, and never once did I find him not supporting what I was doing all through my life. I think the last time I really spent time with him was that 2015 Wazifa retreat in Prescott there. We hadn't had an opportunity since then to be with each other. And I'd been telling stories of Wali Ali my whole life because I've been teaching all over the place in different places, telling stories. And so what I did is he was leading a walks practice, and I got up and I told a Wali Ali story about him leading walks. And for me, I think after I told it, I'll tell it in a second. After I told it, he said the things people remember, but the things people remember are those impressions he left deeply upon our soul, And also in that moment of being able to tell a story about him in his presence solidified the confidence in my being and the teachings I'd received from him over all the periods of my life that I spent with him, that I felt I'd come to some completion when I could do that, when I could tell a story about him in his presence. I think the story was in the early days, we were doing the astrological walks in Saturday night class, which was the dance teaching class of the time, where we all learned to be dance leaders. And I couldn't get Venus. I was a natural moon. I got moon every time. I had to learn to do the sun, but I was sitting there trying to get Venus, and I couldn't get Venus. And so, not in frustration or anything, but I'm walking around not getting it. And he walks up next to me and he offers me his little finger. And we locked little fingers together and walked around the room twice. And Venus came into me. He just transmitted Venus directly to my soul. And I've always been able to get it ever since. And that was a wonderful experience for me. And so I told that story, while he was leading a Venus dance, and found a kind of completion in my being with the support he had given me my whole life. So I got lots of stories, but I'm not going to tell them because we're stuck for time. I spent my first 5 years in Sufism living with him at the Kankasam. So I have all the stories of Kankasam and many, many others through the years. And so maybe I'll write them down or something someday and we can share them in another way. So thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about Wali Ali.
Hey, everyone. Boy, impressions on my soul, Murshid. In 1972, from the East Coast, I hitchhiked to the first Rainbow Gathering. From the Rainbow Gathering, I saw the Sufi dancing in Santa Fe. And when I saw that, I had to find it, and they were all in San Francisco. So I hitchhiked to San Francisco. Then I had to find the Sufis. My name then was Mary Frances Farrell, and I was initiated by Wali Ali in 1972. And I remember 1975, I was very pregnant at the Mendocino camp. And I remember Wali Ali, what it was like to be in the wake of his presence, being the person who held his hand in the dances and putting my foot where he put his foot. That was how I received transmissions. I didn't know what the words were, but just in any sesshin, when he'd start walking, if I could go behind him, all of a sudden the openings would happen and I would just get in alignment. And there were no words at that time, but he's been so generous to me. And I just had such an experience listening to Nizamuddin and Vakila and Halim talk about our last experiences together. I, in my dance self, was looking at Murshid and saying, if I lift my arms up, will you? Meanwhile, he's being generous to me on the inner. He's giving again to me and again to me over and over again. Things like I moved into the mentor garden to live with him in Ahmadine when he came back as a single person from 95 to 98. And I'm walking down the hall and I said, I want to lead dances. He says, so lead. Okay. So then Muiz and I did some dance leading in 95 to 98. In 98, I moved to Connecticut, took 3 years to start a Sangha that's still going on. It was like he gave me the confidence to it's this generosity. And Nizam, you said he wants to challenge people. Well, he gave me ultimatums because it was very Zen, which is what I could receive. After I was initiated, I'm sitting in the dark office in the mentor garden, and he says, yeah, Wahabo, and he looks at me. He said, I think you need to work with a woman. I said, fine with me. I got up and I left and I went to Frida. And I was with her until she died in 87, being one of the people that got to hang around and be part of that team to help. So it was like those short circuits. And then when I had Fatima as a midwife, Dr. Rickstoffen, all for this birth of the baby between John Beam and myself. And then we end up in the hospital and we both almost die. And I wake up and I have no baby and I've got an IV and I get some money and I go to the payphone in San Francisco General and I dial Wali Ali and I said, I haven't seen my baby. And I'm crying. He says, go get him. So I did. I went and found what floor the ICU was for little babies. And I stood outside there until I got my kid on the board. And then I had him. And that was because of Murshid, because he saw my soul. He saw what I needed and all the limitations that I had around. And he just knock on the door and a wall would fall over. But I trusted him implicitly. And the confirmation back in the days when I moved to the mentor garden from living on Vashon, in the Kanka rather, and I was there for 10 years from 2010 to 2020. And we had this God is breath and we had all these amazing experiences. And in 2014, I had an experience of God is breath. You know, you call in the illuminated souls. Well, for once I didn't call one in, and Mary Magdalene showed up. And I had that for 30 days. I mean, I'm shopping in the mission, I'm doing my stuff, but the presence was there. It was just a presence. And when I talked to him, he confirmed it, and he gave me the name Magdalena, which is a gift beyond measure. And I don't use it unless because of just my age. I just turned 81. So Zubeen, Mary, I have those two names, but the Magdalena, I want you all to know, I honor this treasure that was given to me by Murshid. And when I hear it, it opens my portal. So thank you to the generosity of this great soul that's still giving. This isn't gone, folks. It's here. It is so present. So may we all just continue to rejoice and be glad. Thank you.
Amen. Perfect lead in. Thank you all so much. I cannot thank you enough for bringing the living presence of our Murshid, of Wali Ali, here in all of his guises, his human guises. And as Zubeen just said, he's not gone. The ever-living, the eternal is here. His connection with us is in no way predicated on either him nor us still being in the body. And so we will recite Ya Hayo Ya Qayyum 11 times together. Ya Hayo Ya Qayyum. 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 Ya Murshid, Ya Murshid, Ya Hayo, Ya Qayyum.
Thank you, beloved other me, Barakat. So those of you who are following the program know that we've come to the conclusion of the service. And we have planned to have a 5-minute break, and then those who want to stay on and be put in small groups to have time to share amongst yourselves. Is this going to work for you, Rahima, to have another half hour with us?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So by my watch, it's 11:04. So at 11:09, meaning no later than 11:10, if you want to be in a small group, please come back. And I know Barakat has to leave, but I will be here and I'll be put in one of those small groups. And I look forward to that. I am immeasurably grateful to have experienced this with each one of you and to have had time to spend pinning people who didn't speak. We are all connected in the heart. I'm sorry, I'm going to sing once through. May the blessings of God rest upon him. May God's peace abide in him. May his presence illuminate our souls now and forever more. Amen.